Okay. Good morning, everyone. Good to be back in Florida. Weather is much warmer, and okay. According to others, we need to go through a little bit about these four thoughts that change our mind, hopefully. in the right direction. It's, in the Tibetan, we have lo tok namba shi. So lo is mind or thinking, and tok is reverse. So these thoughts can reverse our regular norms and regular values and regular thinking. That leads deeper in a samsaric thing or involvement of a samsaric thing. So it's difficult to reverse our pattern of thought that's sort of automatically or built in or come with when we are born. So it's a little bit difficult to reverse. So that's why there's only one Metarepa, yeah, in Kajupa tradition. So it's difficult practice. Especially when Buddhist study and practice, and especially Tibetan Buddhist practice, this preliminary practice, lead with these four thoughts that's changed our thinking value. And of course, hearing these is sometimes not that pleasant, and especially in the modern days. Death, destruction, and loss, madness, and or we need to dealing with. And once change our value, it's a little bit, of course, difficult to lose what we put values. And I hope you don't mind maybe I will say something that sometimes death and suffering and destruction and sickness, and these are, sometimes we don't want to hear that because our life is want to be normal, but unless we shake up our thinking foundation, it's a little bit difficult to change our habits. Even we don't kind of obviously change everything, but I think our belief system is need to change a little bit. And of course, then we do motivational practice or prayers that related with our daily practice. We often chant, and we start with that, and then we go through a few lines that I haven't been here for a while. Drupon Rinpoche has been giving teaching, and fortunately Virginia is here, so will help us to navigate this Mundo preliminary practice that then we can maybe sort of go over what these four mind changings are again. I'm sure you will be bored, but that's just part of the practice, yeah? So maybe we can... Okay. And that's what today we are doing. And until Drupon Rinpoche come back, I can sort of lead you here. However, next week and probably until June 16th, I will be away from the town, so I will be back on June 16th. Now I don't know then after that weekend, or that's Sunday, we can start again through then. If you have questions, we can discuss, and particularly preliminary practice that are also mandatory in a Tibetan practice, especially if you do 3-year retreat. That's the first year you probably spend time on the preliminary practice people are sometimes wondering, what do you do in 3 years? You just meditate and be quiet? It's not really. The 3-year retreats is very busy schedule with accumulations. First year, probably, my experience, the first entire year is spent on preliminary practice. And there's traditions that also do 100 days, these 4 thoughts, before starting preliminary practice, the actual accumulation of refuge and bodhicitta. So that's just, if you haven't done, there's still have a chance to do many times. If you're already done, there is still can polish preliminary practice. One of Patrul Rinpoche's teacher, who wrote this preliminary, this is 1996 published. Anyway, this is the word of my perfect teacher, who's famous yogi or practitioner or scholar. It's called Patrul Rinpoche or the Tsapatrul, and his Dharma name is Njingmi Chuji Wangpo. And his guru is Njingmi Gyalrui Nyuku, who did 25 times preliminary practice a cycle. So that takes 25 years. And if you think preliminary practice is just need to go through and then leave behind, sometimes people think, but that's not the case here. And if you want to detail explanation and the teachings on preliminary practice, this is based on Nyingtik preliminary practice that we chant in the Nyingtik tradition. So this is commentary on that. And then, of course, we have the ornament of liberation, jewel ornament of liberation. It seems maybe the ornament of purchase liberation is much, maybe probably in that way. But either way, we have already adopted that jewel ornament of liberation. And that is probably in Tibet the extensive commentary or the guidance of the preliminary practice in Tibetan tradition. So Gampopa is much more earlier than Patrul Rinpoche. So we have all these materials that already translated in English, and people are most famous book. These books are almost every Tibetan Buddhist practitioners know what when we talk about the jewel ornament or the word of my perfect teacher. So maybe we don't have to go through details on these books, but we can go line by line. We have now Virginia has translation on the line by line of Ndugongondo, particularly the 4 thoughts that change our mind or return.
This is Eric Freimiller's translation of them. Yeah, but also I would like to just let you all know that these 2 books that Khenpo Rinpoche is referring to, the Ornament of Precious Liberation by Gampopa and the Words of My Perfect Teacher by Tsapatrul Rinpoche. So in your every time you've received guidelines on each of the sections that we've done up to this point, precious human life, impermanence, karma, cause and effect, there's the reading list, the suggested reading list. So those books and the links to purchase those books are there in that information. And definitely, if you haven't already purchased, especially these two books that Khenpo Rinpoche is referring to, really, really highly recommend it. It's the foundation. These books are really the foundation for the four thoughts that turn the mind across the board, really, for all lineages. Mm-hmm.
And also, this is not sort of sectarianly adopted books that some books doesn't go beyond on tradition, but these two books go beyond the own lineage and the tradition. And you can see, in the word of my perfect teacher, when chapters start with the quoting from either Milarepa or Lord Jigten Sumgong's verses, you can see in there. And of course, Gampopa's time, there is not really particularly Nyingma or that much like these days, but that's more what we call Sutra Mahamudra, and Gampopa's Ornament of Liberation. And the Takbun Tarjente Doi Chakja Chembo Serni Shigore Tindu Tan Dotang Asea Tiki Chibarte Wang La Dani Younger Timato Jirton Tundang Malabiade Tundajiware Tindu Gambo Big Song Tanda Takbun Tarjente Yaguchita Tawaina. Then Mamba Ngok Yamlechenanda, Zalong Yamlechenanda, Chudu Yamlechenanda, Chakching Yamlechena, Tanda, Tempo Chakyage, Sajita Vuchakore, Taindu, Tadale, Tatoma, Payawu Kirisamudos.
So he said, this is really, Gampopa's Ornament of Precious Liberation is really like the kind of progressive stages in accord with the Sutric Mahamudra,
yes.
Right? So meaning that, the difference, primarily the difference between Sutra and Tantra is empowerment. But apart from that, they're really the same. The meaning is the same. And so as the foundation of all levels of Sutra and Vajrayana practice, Gampopa's teachings that are found, are this guide of the Ornament of Precious Liberation is really, like if you look at it well, he said, if you really familiarize yourself with it, then it will give you such a solid foundation in all of the practices that come later. So the Tantra, all of the Tantric or Vajrayana practices, Mahamudra, channels, winds, and drops, the 6 yogas, it is said to be like the earth, like the very earth of the practice, the foundation of everything, really. And so in dependence upon that, then your practice will really become very stable.
Okay, somehow I already talk a lot. I kind of excited to come back to.
We're so excited to have you. Thank you. We're so excited to have Rinpoche back. Yeah. Thank you.
So I spend time in summer with you this summer. So we will discuss some more, but maybe we chant verse and then slowly we can. Today just warm up and please ask questions and we can discuss as well.
Okay, so turn to page 1 in your prayer book. all mother sentient beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstructors who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and all-knowingness. May they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. I will quickly establish them in the state of the most perfect and precious Buddhahood. Ma nam ka dang yam pe sem jen tam je de war dang din guao dang ren nor du la na me pa yang dang par zo pe chang chu rinpo she to par ja. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind.
Ti jedu san ma gi ge bar do lu ma gi song ge wa la go ma shi bar do lu ma gi song ge wa la go du de ren e song de ni ma san ta zang ge bar do lu ma gi song
all sentient beings, limitless as the sky, take refuge in the glorious kind Lama Vajradhara, the embodiment of the body, speech, mind, qualities, and activities of the Buddhas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, source of the 84,000 categories of the teaching, and Lord of the Sanghas. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Yidams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakinis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom.
Namgen Tadang Nyambe Semjen Tamje Choju Tu Somje Dijin Chekwa Tam Cheki Ko Son To Yoten Trenle Tam Cheki Ngowo Kyurpa Choki Pombo Tongka Yashu Sashin Jonem Pape Gendu Tam Jeki Nada Trijen Zawa Tam Juba Jebe Balde Lama Tampa Nanda Kyapsun Chiyo Yidan Jingor Ji Lakso Namla Kyapsun Chiyo Sanje Chomden De Namla Kyapsun Chiyo Tambe Chu Namla Kyapsun Chiyo Pape Gendu Namla Kyapsun Chiyo Pawo Kandro Kyokyo Sungme Tso Yeshi Ki Chendang Denpa Namla Kyapsun Jiyo. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta
and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Jamchur Nyingbo Chiki Bar Sangye Namla Kyapsurji Chudan Jamchur Semba Ye Soyan Deshin Kyapsurji Jitar Gongi Desheke Jamchur Turni Kepadam Chanjo Sempe La Pala Deda Rinshin Nepadar Dezin Drola Pendondu Chanjo Semni Kekijin Dezin Duni La Pala Rinpa Zindu La Pari. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Chodan Soji Chonamla Chanchu Bargu Dani Gyapsurji Dargi Jinso Gipe Sonamgi Drola Penjere Sangin Droparsho. May all mother sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the causes of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness which is free from sorrow. May they rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Namka dang yambe sanchen tamche dewa dang dewe kyudan denpa gyurje dunyal dang dunyal gi gyudang drawar gyurje dunyal mepe dewa dang midrawar gyurje Nyering chakta nidang rawe Tongyong la nepar gyurje. Refuge of all sentient beings without exception, divine subjugator of terrifying Maras together with their hosts of demons, the one who understands all reality without exception exactly as they are. Transcendent Conqueror, together with your disciples, please come here to this place. Benza Samanza, Benza Samanza, Benza Samanza, Malu Sanchen Gunjin Gonjorjen, Dude Ponje Mitse Chonzela. Ngon malu jishin yenjorbe, Jomden korche nedir sheksu so. Argam padyam pushpe durupe aloke gande nirvite shabda pratitsa so. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, and the sun and moon. As a Buddha field, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha fields. Whatever merit I've gathered through prostrations, offerings, confession, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying, for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Sashi Pushu Shushi Meto Dran Rira Lingsi Ninde Gambadi Sangye Singla Mikte Purwayi Droku Namda Chindu Kewajo Chaksa Wadang Chojing Shabada Jesu Yera Gorshin Sowayi Gewa Shunse Dagi Jizanpa Tanje Sope Chanjo Jermo. And to page 11. Namo, to the Lama of utterly pure appearance and existence, I offer the fundamental ground of appearance and existence. I supplicate you to thoroughly liberate the three realms. Please grant your blessings and overturn the depths of samsara. Sublime Master, wish-fulfilling jewel, crown ornament, the inconceivable, inexpressible mind of the victorious ones, the one endowed with the five wisdoms of omniscience, gracious one, the embodiment of love, precious protector of beings, I supplicate you from within the essence of mind. Please grant your blessings from within the innate nature. Please bless me that I may realize the Dharmakaya that is beyond intellect, this primordially unborn, completely pure mind. Transcendent conqueror, the one thus gone, foe destroyer of afflictive emotions, completely perfected Buddha, endowed with logic and virtue, the one gone to bliss, knower of the world, captain, tamer of beings, the unexcelled teacher of gods and men, I respectfully prostrate, completely touching my head to the stainless feet of the unequaled Shakya king. At the time of your birth, leader of two-legged beings, taking 7 steps on this great earth, you proclaimed, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise even then, I prostrate. Possessing a body of complete purity, your sublime form is excellent. An ocean of primordial wisdom, you are like a golden mountain, the one whose renown is evident throughout the 3 worlds, protector of supreme attainment, to you I prostrate. To you who are endowed with the supreme marks, whose face is like an immaculate moon, to you, the one with a complexion like gold, I prostrate. A flawless one such as you among the 3 levels of existence is most exquisite. Unparalleled, omniscient one, to you I prostrate. Supreme among humans, captain of those to be tamed, the one thus gone who severs the all-binding fetters, who with senses pacified is utterly pacified and skilled in peace. To that one, the one who dwelled at Shravasti, I prostrate. Refuge endowed with great compassion, totally omniscient one who indicates the way, ground basis for oceans of merit and qualities, I prostrate to the one thus gone. The pure cause free from attachments, the virtue that liberates from the lower realms, the altogether supreme ultimate truth, to the pacifying Dharma I prostrate. Having been liberated, they also reveal the path to liberation. Thoroughly respectful of the 3 higher trainings, they are a field of sublime qualities. To the Sangha I also prostrate. And then to page 9. Nansi Namdagi Lama La Nansi Shishen Sojopabo Kamson Yondur Dusawade Korwa Dondur Sujinjilo Jigi Shindru Zogyan Zasa Jome Gyalwe Tok Yenpe Yeshe Nagdande, Sewe Dagni Kadrinchen, Drova Yumze Rinpoche, Dagsemni Dingange Solvate, Chuni Kinando Jinjilo, Semdunge Kime Namdati, Loke Chogoro Chokpa Jinjilo, Chom Dende Deshin, Shirpa Trachamba, Yangtakpa Tsokpe, Sangye Rikpa Tam Shansu Denpa, Dewa Shikpa Jikten Genpa, Kebu Durwa Kalo Durwa Lana Mepa Lata Me Namki Tompa Nyame Shaki Japo Shaki Drima Mepa Lago Tute Grupe Chaksalo Kanse Kangi Tso Jotamse Sachen de la Gomba Donwone Nani Jiten Dinan Choche Son Tetse Kepa Kela Chaksalo Namda Kunan Chodo Susawa Yeshe Yatso Serki Lupondra Drakpan Jikten Zuna Namewa Gombon Joni Kula Chaksalo Senjo Tenpa Drime Dawetsa Sendon Drawa Kula Chansalo Dudra Chundra Sipa Sunanze Nyame Yenchen Chula Chansalo Mejo Durwa Kalo Junze Chen Kunjuro Chingwa Junze Deshinje Wangbo Zishin Yirji Silanke Nyenyo Shukpa De La Chaksalo Gompo Tuje Jindemba Tamche Jemba Tomba Po Sona Yoten Jaksorzi Deshin Shekla Chaksalo Dapen Dojan Kawegu Dewe Genson Le Droshin Chektu Dodan Chokur Pat Sikur Chula Chaksalo Drone Drove Lam Yantun Lapa Dakla Ratugu Shingi Tomba Yontenji Gedu Ganyan Jaksalo. To page 15. I prostrate to the youthful Manjusri, to those in the worlds of the 10 directions, however many there are, all the lions among humans who appeared during the 3 times. To all of them without exception, I pay homage with respectful body, speech, and mind. The force of my aspiration prayer for excellent conduct brings all the victorious ones directly to mind. Bowing down with bodies as numerous as atoms in the realms, I prostrate to all the victorious ones. In a single atom there are Buddhas as numerous as atoms, each residing in the midst of their sons and daughters. Like that, I imagine the whole Dharmatatu completely filled with victorious ones. To those with oceans of inexhaustible, praiseworthy qualities, with sounds containing oceans of tones of melodic speech, I express the qualities of all the victorious ones. I praise all the Sugatas. With the finest flowers, the finest garlands, music, ointments, supreme parasols, supreme lamps, and the finest incense, I make offerings to the victorious ones. With the finest cloths, supreme scents, and fine powders equal to Mount Meru, all displayed in supreme and magnificent ways, I make offerings to those victorious ones. With vast and unsurpassable offerings, I venerate all the victorious ones. Through the power of faith and excellent conduct, I prostrate and offer to the victorious ones. Whatever negative actions I have performed with body, speech, and also mind, overpowered by desire, aggression, and stupidity, I confess each and every one of them. I rejoice in everyone's merit, the victorious ones of the 10 directions, the bodhisattvas, the pratyeka Buddhas, those in training, those beyond training, and all beings. I request the protectors, the lamps of the worlds of the 10 directions, who passing through the stages of awakening, attain Buddhahood beyond attachment, to turn the unsurpassable Dharma wheel. I supplicate with my palms joined together, those who intend to demonstrate nirvana, to remain for kalpas as numerous as atoms in the realms, for the welfare and happiness of all beings. I dedicate whatever slight virtue is accumulated through prostrating, offering, confessing, rejoicing, requesting, and supplicating to enlightenment. And Daki malu de da tamche ga ludan dangji dangwe jaje sombo jube molan dangji jawa tamji je ngozanda shenge dunye luram tubaye jawa gunla chanzal dorje dana dunye sanje nam sanje seje una shubata dada cheje yana malupa tanje jarwa tage kanwa mo dada naba mize jamso nam yangye yana jamso rabunji jarwa kunji yoten rabju jen dewa shibba tanje dage do meto tamba kunwa tamba tang senye nom tang shubba tang jodan marme jodan drupo tamba ye jarwa teta lane shubba ji naza tamba nam tang chunjo tang jime puma ra nyamba tang kubai che param pabin chogun ji jawa tata layan chobarai ji choba kanam mele kujiwa Deda kyawa tamche sanrambo Sampo dagi dibe topdagi Teta tamche dagi soso sha Choju jarwa kundan sangye tse Rangya nanda lotan lotan Jowa kunji sunam panlayang Teta kunji jesu tahi rong kanam
chun jiten chulmada chancho rimpa sanje mokjage gompo de da tachi tanjela korlo lana me par ko nyanyen de ton kanze de da Droa kuma penchin de weche kalpa shingi gyune shupaya dagi tamora raja zorwaki chaksa wadam chokchin chakpadam jesu ram gushin zorwaki Shunje dagi jizapa Tanje zope chanjo chenro.
Page 16. Please turn the wheel of the Dharma of the two vehicles and their combination according to the dispositions and mental capacities of sentient beings. Namki Sampada Loye Jegra Jetawa Chechon Tumon Tekpaye Chuki Kolo Gordo
Zon Sanje Dan Jejing Ore Dan Jingor Jam So Chab Karin Sume Tuje Dan Yin Kam Sam Chuje Jarbu Shab Jebe Modra Mame Balango Randu De Go Sam Kurba Jimbu Go Ne Chan Sar Jin Jab Sun Chewo Chewa Ne Tserab Jin Chungwa Tam Je Do Do Tsewa Jimbu Go Ne Je So Son De Je Jin Je La Baranza Do So Gange Jar Son Da Ve Mengong Ka San Zun Ben Dong Tembeze Vosun Juzar Vin Rokun Meki Duzi Jor Dukjin Da Ma Guni Jurin Jiten Son Jin Kong Tuwon Bin Ma Gar Po Deren Da Lo Yin Zor Jong Urjin So Lim Bin Me Don Bu Zer Jar Vin Nang Zor Rong Jin Tenzo Be Ye Yodin Zon Bar Ve Bin Ma Juni Da Lo Ben Zor Jong Jini Dun Kun Shi Jin Si Bin Chen Si Jin Ko Ra Gung Shin Ro Kun Se Mo Man Ba San Se Lo Ro Kun Den Kudon Ye Ji Zhi Ba Mi Gun Chu Yin Ka Lan Zin Ba Kan Jan Bar Shun Kun Ne Ka Ve Zo Gin Cho Yin Ro Bin Ma Kar Bon Zin Be Shir Le Song Hu Zir Dong Ge Ra Yin Kim Mizra Lo Run Jo Zo E Yon Jin A Ge Bar Mo Da Yi Jong Dor Jin Chong Jin De Lo Na Ro Da Mar Ba Me La Chu Jin Gan Bo Va Ba Mo Ro Ba Jo Van Ring Go Ga Ju La Ma Nam La So Wan De Wo Mi Chu Ji Yin Ji Po Zhang Ni De Sum Sang Ji Gun Jin O Ni Rong Sum Chu Kung Mo Sum Don Zip Sawe La Ma Nam La Ku Jan Zor Da Son Ro E Lo Na Chu La Jo. Okay, thank you so much for spending time with us in person and online. Yeah, Dharma practice should be enjoyable, I guess, if we want to. So that's sometimes I think Dharma practice give us such joy. And gabs tene chu drop sayate dugru sengda dugru pokile dugru sayate ningru sayate dugru say nido ningru sana ningla rupa namju reshi jabdu ning Nang repeat things and ning the rupas, the ning the rupa you receive to Raymond, the ning kong repeat things and ning nang mamani, repeat thing mamani, some not on it, two drop go race, ning ru said.
So that being said, sometimes to practice the Dharma takes a great deal of, I think what is usually translated as perseverance or dugnal
Mhm.
So, or I don't know how we would say that in English, but it's like a struggle. It might be more of a struggle sometimes. So there's this word, there are these two words, ningru and dugru. Ningru is also what is commonly translated as perseverance, but the literal meaning of the term in Tibetan, ning is heart and ru is bone. So it's like, if we explain it, it's like really like striving from the bone of your heart, which obviously there's not a bone in the heart, but the idea is that like from the very bottom of your heart, from the depths of your being, making an effort, and that is what the Dharma requires.
Tene nga tso inchik ke nangla bong chill zamade bong chill.
Bone chill. So sometimes we say bone chill in English. He's saying he thinks this has a similar connotation.
Tene dug ru sa de rawo insa.
Chilled to the bone, kind of. Yeah.
Dungarte repeating ne. Tene nyang ne. Tel donglen chi top gores, tel soba gom top gores.
Okay. So when you put these two kind of words together, dugru, which is like the bone of suffering, if you will, and the bone of the heart. So it's like, the kind of suffering that like really touches you to your depths, to the depths, or like really gets to the like bone of the heart. That has to be like taken onto the path of practice.
Tende inde da jertong som higre danda. So Poland rawina tene da kawachi sayade tene kawachi gogor karasena le lawo ta tik sonrawo o sasa dan duksa Tomat lelawa ragya yo marwa te inde pola dongar cheshute chakto ni ser chamo chane ko khoya men chamo chaya de se saya men ton ro ya chakto ni ser de nyoya yo.
So in the Tibetan version of practicing Dharma, this kind of hardship or difficulty is a given and it's necessary. So we don't actually expect or want or need easy conditions. And in fact, it's really, like here, our situation is so different, but in Tibet, those who really embarked on the path of practice had to endure difficulty and hardship at a very basic level, like, getting enough to eat, being warm enough, in the elements. So, it wasn't so easy to get a hold of what you needed to live on or to eat during, in the course of your Dharma practice. And so the biggest hardships really were hunger and cold.
Chutram kenchigi la chan songina that is kale khabo chagyor yinayon tene mela reba ke ta teni la su tho ni tene khu me ko ba reche tang chakpo la sok ban den se ma go ba ta jertong ga zo nam yuk sa ya tene ma yin ba tene ngo na tene Rusane, tende messagine, tene ta melariba sayate, kira chambachine, tendis chasonrwa.
And so, those who practice Dharma can expect difficulty and hardship in the course of their practice or on their path of practice. So at times it might be difficult, but we have the examples, of these great masters like Milarepa, who, didn't need a lot of clothing, in cold regions, meditating in extreme conditions, not even though he didn't have enough to eat, his kind of happiest abode was, in the solitude of a lonely cave. And he, didn't even have ordinary food and lived on the, plants and herbs in the area, and yet he has become, he had a very lived a very happy life in these circumstances, in these conditions, completely dedicated to the practice of Dharma, and so he's become such a famous example.
Trong ritu simbar shinjil opsayo. Trangbo nga mela rebate. Metsendele ritu lan rem chene. Tene chu shama ji drop tobar. Te shinjil opsane da mela rebagin dorna. Ji zorban depsate marba. Rajur marbi shablan du. Trong ritu simbar shinjil opsane. Rajur marbi shablan dus. Rajur ta marba te konrek la marba. Ene telo zorban da chene ta nga Tobia car top gogoresana, retreat and ram tobiaji, gogores on your mato, Nala, Tene Tawatan Tokpase and Awadan, Tanya and Ratang, Top Cosadan, Jupanjor, Tenrichin, Songamando.
And so, we have the beautiful words of Milarepa available to us, through, for instance, many of his songs, the 100,000 songs of Milarepa, where, he says, he repeats refrains like, bless me, this beggar Milarepa, to spend my life in mountain retreats. And he always supplicates his lama, to at the feet of the translator Marpa I bow. And so, what is it that he supplicates for, or he requests? Bless me to spend my life in retreat. He doesn't say, bless me to have high realization, bless me to, gain some great attainment, bless me to have fame, name, and glory, bless me to have, a comfortable life. No, he just simply says, bless me to stay, to keep to mountain retreats. Bless me to stay in retreat.
Zamba Zokbing Gors and the Melaribak, Zamba Zokbing Gors and satisfaction. No matter. Zamba Nan Deniji Tovaina, the Dijumaina, telling ye Zambate. That's awesome. Big. And the in the Conagin Gorgon on Latene, Navaina, Metilap chin, Chunaginduge, Chulchik. Samanda Kona Gogin to get and Tenny Tendrik Chinyemeba. And she saw in Jimaji Young Chin, Tika wrong, Ning never tend a young chin. Young old songs and Dungarchin and Munyemeba. Tenrich in the Trakpon Dino, the Gashasoina, Tene, Namjungaron Samba to Zoba in son. Nana Trememe, but Shinang Mamebe, returned the children, and I'm just some but of his own.
So there's one song by Milarepa that's titled like the perfection of my intention, or like the fulfillment of my intention. So it meaning that if it turns out as such, then his greatest hopes will be fulfilled. And so he says, if I am sick, may there be nobody there to fuss over me or to worry or to ask me, what do you need? What can I get for you? What food do you need? How can I take care of you? If I die, let there be nobody to lament, to suffer and lament and mourn my death. And so meaning, if I die in this lonely cave, with no one to fuss over me if I'm ill and no one to mourn over my death if I die, my intention will be fulfilled.
China Ganji Mebar, non Chakji Mebar, Retunder Hinuna, Namjurji Samba Zoba Yinzon, Chilo la Gambi Jisene, footprints and meeting the Yongchin, Yongchin, Gambi Ji Mebar, Chakpulera. Non Chakji Mebas and Kashing Chakwi, Senat Madesage, Tendiki Ji Meva, Yona Chak Ji Mevas and Hisonina, Chayong Malaba, Tendik Rorum Breaching once and my body is decades and eaten by worms, and I die in this cave. I fulfill my wish.
Okay. Yeah. So okay, maybe you can correct me because there were parts I didn't get to, but and outside, in a lonely cave where there are no footprints of others to be seen. If I die in this lonely, solitary cave, my intention will be fulfilled. If there's no sign, to anyone else of my death, if my body decays and is just eaten by worms, if I die on this seat, this meditation seat in my lonely cave, and my body decays and is just eaten by worms, I will have fulfilled my intention.
So the point here is maybe more. 당가서 등도 두라니 니스타징노 렘로르테인도 the anxieties and depressions 해야돼서 배가서 돈원치거와. 이나 드네 angoma 단다 냠렌치는 남바게 드네 depression 해야 텐데 요도 요지그레테나 더솔라 단다 포게 포랑게 게라 단다 depression 해야 돼 나롱 삼츠레 드네 단다 파트 mixed depressions thing tanit 용금도 되는데 대 용나요 또 두버스 제가서 초파이나 다들 두그루스나 쟁엠바당 두보 칸리 총소나요 텔 동란체 더 바텔 두그루스 거라 닝루스나 테러와 어때인데 추드르드 텐텐 되는 칼릭 용그레스
So, now in this 21st century, there are lots of kind of abstract difficulties and hardships that people deal with, anxiety, depression, and those, many who are interested in Dharma practice, they also, in their practice, they confront things like depression. But, this is really a modern phenomenon, he believes, because in Tibet, in his opinion, until now, before, he doesn't think there was even a word for depression, like this kind of depression that we talk about, in these modern times. Yes, there was sadness and discontent and hardship, really persevering and taking on hardship and for the sake of Dharma, or in the because that is what Dharma practice requires, but usually it was it was conditional, difficult circumstances, these very basic hardships that he was speaking to, food and and the harshness of the elements, and this is what had to be really endured, or one had to really struggle with in the midst of one's dharma path. And that was a necessity. That was a given, for someone who really gave the, devoted themselves to the practice of dharma.
And also, soba number some he on the sobas. He on the tanda. No yell himanyam be sobas. Chor no bachiona, tell par land no ba meterba. Then tell suit about a soba. As in Shingdo. Then Dungar Tangland soba said, Dungar Chong yonder. So town to Lanchin, Yona tell a Pedemaga of Shiramatavachin and Tigi to suit of Batella. Dungar Tangland soba sero. What do you do? Dungar town to Layan tell the kitchen boy in Sarta, the Tajik takes on Gutula, to Ramish Tajik and Nola, and Salab Lavaina, this not so. Tajir Tong Chu here to tell Chu said the Drovayina, the Toma, a devotan Kibo, young race, Tangbonina Tehi, Yadu Tene, Chudumna, Dungar, young ray, Yona, young telesut of go race, and I want this such. Calendar, da Chungoma, Siena Tenris, Tenri Insares.
Hatani Sumba or Dambudini?
Jertong Soba Joro.
So there are generally three types of patients that are spoken of in the context of Dharma. And the first one is the patients in respect to like harm doers or harmful circumstances or enemies who wish to harm one. For instance, if there is someone who is harmful or angry or aggressive towards one, to not have the need to lash out and return, or to return that harm, to return harm with harm. So this is the first type of patience. And then there's patience in the face of suffering and hardship, taking on or enduring difficulty and hardship in the face of suffering. And this is very important. This is really important for us to understand, especially in the context of Dharma practice, because in this 21st century, sometimes there's this way that Dharma is related to, like, oh, the Dharma will make you happy, and if you practice the Dharma, then things should be going well, you should be feeling good, and if there is difficulty, that somehow, that becomes a discouragement. But actually, it should be understood that, someone who really understands the practice of Dharma knows that it necessitates, taking on difficulty and hardship. So it actually means patience in the face of difficulty in persevering in our Dharma practice.
Chula soba said, Chunigi turn Tomba Nila soba ten yonder until ye chain so toba, Kaji, then Tomba Ni down. Tendetawa, he yonder, so metop and the Yoro, or Tende sobas and Chertong soba, Tende Yores.
And then the third type of patience is patience in confronting powerfully profound truths such as the nature of dharmata or the truth of emptiness. So there are some who might be overwhelmed, for instance, by such a powerful truth as these. And so this kind of patience is referring to like enduring kind of the vastness, if you will, of those profound truths, being, emptiness or the truth of dharmata.
And this is maybe Dejikina Tanda Denderva Yomarina so Tingduki Chu Gom yoga seya kariyina tene mangche tanda yoga zesa tendela tomala sanji kikunda tendewa the yoga the sanji nila nderwa tanda yo marwa yina sako the sanji ki chu ti dene gom jap yoga jongwa yina tene rangalu sem tata aje nyokra yina re kurvi ki nongla kange tende sertok re sayanda ta tiksongki tula tende yudewara nge tunda ngoma de xebayina chu sayade duru ta nyingru chi tomne ane udungar su tom kendala tene da chu drop sagisare.
So again, like, these days, the Dharma, I think what Kimbola is sort of pointing to is that we have lots of examples of very watered down Dharma out there. So like in a lot of places, for meditation or yoga, you see, for instance, in a lot of yoga studios, Buddhist statues. And actually what's weird is like there's no connection with yoga, that version of yoga and the Buddha. But, there are often like many pictures of the Buddha and yoga statues. And there's kind of this kind of implied sort of message there of, this is to sort of like ease your mind and, give you peace and serenity, and freedom from troubles, freedom from struggles and difficulties. But the truth of the matter is that in practicing Dharma, to achieve, for instance, what the Buddha achieved, necessitates undergoing difficulty and hardship. And so we have to have this nyingru, this, heart-bone sort of dedication that is enduring difficulty and hardship in order to really accomplish the Dharma.
Okay. I'm not trying to disencourage you to do yoga and meditation. I'm sure yoga and meditation is really good for our mind and body, mental health and so forth. The main point here is sometimes karisana ngaso nekapge dewase atala chak chene tene tele shoje yin hyok songina tene chungomata drobialtes yon par jangrang sab chandogora te inde chungomasa de dromnande yores tene chungomata ngone drop tone is yurung bo drop tobaina tene tesolo samno hira tangmago ba tene ngatsota lama mambo 예아요르 티마체드네 추냠네 칭에 망보치드네 지 루드 샘플로로체 용도 중고마 좀나 토마토네 요가다 메디테이션 찍고치 되바이나 투수름 복할세 데이터요나 체질 요가 전화용 로 첨부 랩사나 건달깔레 용그레테 인도 다 동아르세야 돼 안더나 제와 가와 나와 치와스 테인도 티게 동아르지 치오 첨부 시세야 돼그 추나지 까 토비야 요 말에서야 그 된다라 때 준정네 용그레 까야 요 말에서 맞아 동아르지 치오 첨부 시세야 돼 제가 난지 동아르지 치오 시세 어때인도 yogi ka thagu mare meditation ka thagu ya marwa ote inde de sach teso sor dongar thanglenchi dongal su thoba ma to dongar maga wa chene dongar ji go mayong war thap khona che de bayina ane ko deng ne dongar the me ba so ma to bayina dongar ta ka thab ya 내가 텐데 인사를 했어. 주고 전부 시사야.
So if we temporarily, if we're sort of attached to, pleasure and, temporary states of happiness, if we become really distracted, so he was saying, it's not like he's saying, yoga and superficial kind of meditation is bad. It can bring about surely some peace of mind, some well-being, but if we get attached to that, if that becomes sort of our purpose, then it really just becomes a distraction. It's not really true Dharma, because in order to truly accomplish the true Dharma, you have to go so much further. You have to go much deeper. We have examples of, many great masters, all of the examples of the great masters of the past, where, there is the example of, someone who is really free and their mind is relaxed and at ease, and they are in a state of, ongoing well-being, ease, and happiness. But this is not a superficial level ease and happiness, and it requires going through what is necessary to truly achieve the Dharma, the undergoing hardship and difficulty and really confronting suffering in order to overcome it. Because, we have like the four great streams of suffering in this embodiment as a human being: birth, old age, sickness, and death. That is going to pervade our experience, regardless. So practicing some yoga, practicing some sort of, superficial level meditation to achieve some, temporary well-being and happiness is not going to overcome, to have the power to overcome those four great streams of suffering. That requires, something much deeper. However, when we take on hardship, when we take on suffering and we confront suffering and we really achieve freedom, that method of endurance and confrontation of suffering is the only way through. So if we don't take our practice deeper, if we stick with kind of these superficial methods of yoga and meditation, then they just won't go that far. Dinda dawo chik lak ba yina. Okay.
Tene da sonji 좀 된데 그 텔라 데네 동아르사야테 추원한 이리스 다테 임바테 하코네 네 공르게 동아르사야테 지르통 아주 동아르게 동아르 넘버 som도와 동아르게 동아르 주르베 동아르 차반도 이지 동아르 솜 요베 나오네 다 동아르게 동아르테 찍볼 마임바 생아도 단다 지보요 삼 데데야 태용 동아르 주차게요레 태인도 어데네 공르 다 지보체네 자부긴 콤발라 흉대와 때 동아리인바 하코네 드네 쳔메 바랍도 종선에 공르 드네 랍도 종네 로토 까와치세네 로토 그랭라 다 베미시 멜라레바 레존 삭비 세네 까와치 요레스 로토 까와치에서
And so the Buddha speaks to, his first sermon or his first teaching was on the truth or the reality of suffering. And he says that suffering is inevitable, and really this life, embodied existence, is like a relentless stream, or a river of suffering. And this suffering, there are three types of suffering. There's the overt suffering, or what is sometimes translated as the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the all-pervasive suffering of conditioned existence. So the overt suffering is really what the Buddha confronted, So even though it may not, when we're not beset with overt suffering, we can be kind of lulled into a state of apathy and thinking that, sort of ignoring the truth of this sort of overt suffering. And the Buddha, in fact, having, in witnessing overt suffering, that became the catalyst for him to give up his life, as a prince, in the palace, and to instead, take up the robes of a wandering mendicant. And he practiced, having given up the life of a householder, he practiced extreme austerities for 6 years and underwent incredible hardship and difficulty, much more so even than Milarepa. And he, before then, he eventually did achieve enlightenment, or awakened as the Buddha. But first he had these 6 years of enduring great hardship and under very, very ascetic conditions.
That in the mazo Ningru said, Dugru said, that's on the Jumdende, Jarbu Cup, Senat and that Jarkane, Tune, Tene, Shingnak Jil, Lotrol Kawajidu, Ji Tobate, Ningru Secret, Ningru Chemboyores, Dugru Chemboyores, Su Santobara, Su Tobari, Santobare, Drup Tobare. That did have Melarebaina, good a ring, good a gong ring la. I didn't chew domne, chalkbow down, and the pep tobara. What he in the chew said the drobala, Dugru gogore, Dugru said the Dungarla, Donlanchi top gogores, Dungar said the Semge Dungarinare, Luge Dungarinare, Teningal Donlanchi top gogores. Dungar said, Sonji Jumdendege, Somyala, Dungar said, Matsoki. Beishaya Yomaris, Beis and a mark up name, Tene Monton Wachaya Yomaris. Dungar say moves till a Donlanchine, Tene Dungar Tele, short of a chico.
So again, there's Ningru, or sort of the heartbone endurance, or Dugru, the suffering, the bone of suffering, kind of really taking it on, to the very bone, or that kind of suffering, which Kimbo Rinpoche said, it like chills you sort of to the bone. The Buddha, when he gave up his kingdom and went to the forest and meditated and endured a really intense hardship, through the practice of asceticism in the forest. And what enabled him to do this was this Ningru, this very deep level endurance and strength to endure hardship. He was able to endure it. He was able, had the strength to endure, such extreme conditions. And again, this is what is not needed when it comes to any, like the true accomplishment of Dharma, which is exemplified also in the story of Milarepa, who spent his entire life, in really harsh circumstances in lonely caves, and endured all sorts of hardships, both mentally, emotionally, and physically. So this is referring to both. We have to be able to take on and endure. We have to have the strength to endure difficulty or hardship, whether mental or physical, and really probably both. And so the Buddha, if it would not have been able to attain Buddhahood without that capacity, So it requires taking on hardship and difficulty in order to achieve liberation.
Teimba Sonzanta Matsulodo number Higi Noni Jong Dungar Gomiate Chugita Kono Ngo Tsuksanda Sagana Teri Tene Tujundo Gomguayang Teri Tene Ted Samnon Coriona, then Kurvasaya, the Dungar Kiran Yirindo, some big Sambat Coriona, then in Kurvig Nonla Nenduk Lot Dogyorva, Dondro, Teledondro, Taindu, Lot Dog Yakchit, Kurvali Lot Dog Yakchit, Dungar Gomiate, and Kitchen Bores.
So, so the four thoughts that turn the mind, meditating on suffering, contemplating suffering, the faults of samsara. This is like where our practice really begins, because when we feel and really confront the truth of suffering, and we become convinced this is nothing but suffering, then we don't want to stay here. We're really determined to get free, but without confronting that suffering, then there's apathy. There's sort of the desire to stay distracted, to stay asleep. But when you really confront the truth of suffering, then you're really inspired, you're really motivated to achieve liberation.
Teindu Sanji Jimdendegi, Demba Hi Chujin Kolo. Said Coriondu, Tongmar, then a Tongarji Demba was on Tongarji Demba said, Demba Higi, Nangi, Tongmat Songer, Song Goya, Gujum Sand Carson, Dongart, Korwa the Dongar Rangi Yimba, Hamago Bayina, then Korwan Deli Tanduk Lot, Jegio Marwa, Sayindu, Dongar said, Hakoya the kitchen Boshutre, Sonda, Dongar, Gab Dongar Sedu, Jig Dongar Dongar. Lula Nasa Chambo, Samuel Dongar Chambo Yovachi, Tejibo Segomar, Natson Korvandi non corny, Songde, Dongar Mato, then it Deva Yomares, that Tito and that Hagoga.
So the Buddha, when he taught, his first teaching on the Four Noble Truths, and the first of the Four Noble Truths is the truth of suffering. There is the truth of suffering. And the reason for this is that if we don't understand, if one doesn't understand samsara as the nature of suffering, then there will not arise the genuine longing to become free, to become liberated. And so whether, both the physical discomfort, difficulty, and hardship, suffering that we inevitably confront, or the mental and emotional hardship and suffering. So these are, not just that, but also, so that's like, those are both versions of the overt suffering. But very important to understand is that it's this endless cycle of death and rebirth, just endlessly cycling in states of cyclic existence. Maybe some periods where there's relative freedom from overt suffering, and a lot of periods where there's a lot of overt suffering. So it's the whole thing, it's the whole cycle that one has to feel a sense of real renunciation towards.
Inada Tixongitula Tanda Chu said, the drop said, the ye said, this Kalikabore Karisana Tsechima said, Le Yorisene Yichea de Kalikabore, Legion said, Yorisat young, Ne Kalikabore Karisana, Turamishtajik Nala. Senrik said, science thing that the Tarni. Thunder not so Yichia Kalikabora, Thunder Gunstanch and a Dayamarva. O Tindu, the nails of Barda, Sechimikichi to Chudov Grace at a young TV Jang, ane kali kabore te indu tando nanga zo nge jishi kangshi ndawo je marshi ge yore tene chiron soge ji chusaya ze drone je jiwa chima saya ze desa ichi chen le jun de saya de ichi chen nyena tene chumre ji tenten 통그레 마도 테미나드네 딱 가르스나 추세 시샤와도 그저치만 거니치 시샤와 인도 등에 지시냠 체나 마체나 디치트 메와이나드네 칼리카모라
So this practice of Dharma really, necessitates the understanding of the truth of suffering, and also, this understanding of the endless nature of it, and past understanding the reality of past and future lives. So sometimes it's hard for, to have confidence in, reincarnation or past and future lives. It's hard to have confidence in the truth of karma, cause, and effect, and especially, in this 21st century, because we really live in a world that values or prioritizes the findings of science in terms of what we can really believe. So it means that something has to be proven. There has to be very direct evidence or something to show, for it. And it's difficult with things like, concepts like this of karma, cause, and effect, or past and future lives, or even the benefits of practicing Dharma, So in that way, there is, maybe this difficulty in our modern times to gain a sense of real confidence. And, and Kimbola says he is, just sharing what he can, or what he
nga ndene marka korchine hinyel shashawaro te indu tange jishi kangshi sene kangtopto higero te nge lengen rawjwa ani che nambage ta ichi dan lejunde liche yuna dene nga zo konon denan zomde wate tanda yongres te meba yina te tange 시야 등의 시거를 했더니 년내 들턴다 유메 지론솔 라레고요. 그래서 이 시게면서가 말이니 네 시와도 지론속에 인지 메니트들 년 그래서 가마다 더웨게 토는 안데네 마카고는 신켄지 등이 되니 주 나시 나롱 그 삼바 당주 주는 가르치인도 등에 시거로와 인지 메니 지론솔 우쪽이 암내다 되네 맞이나 그렇게 말해서 까딴 거요 말와.
Nasola. So I think what he's saying is, it's his responsibility to share with you what he knows, and what he can share with you in terms of these teachings, but it's sort of up to you to decide whether you are whether it really makes sense to you, whether you believe, in, for instance, past and future lives, karma, cause, and effect. There is, the teachings are there, and he is sharing the teachings with you, but it's kind of up to you to do the work to take it further in terms of really bringing it into your psyche and deciding that it really clicks. Because he is not, he can't force it upon you, he can't, he's not going to say, you have to believe this, because you don't. But if it's kind of up to you to decide, or to really take it further in terms of really integrating it and understanding it, and really coming to the place where you believe it.
다이나 주론 속에 투투다 되네 에너지 생도 참면 에너지 부kel 에너지 세서 디스칼렌도다 주론 그 뇌파다오다 배추 당신 단다나 맞냐면도 추수니 들은 좀 되어라. 대인도 tene dēni tā i chi mātop nāyāng tēsachi sūpa gōmchi rwa. Ngā tsō tā ñam tu dzom dewi ki tūndāng rāhu chi la sam no chi tāng. Tene ñam tu ñam lēn rāhu chi na tala tūndā chi tēn yōng ji rīs.
That's all right. So, it takes time and energy. He said it's funny, this word energy that we use in English, it doesn't really have an exact translation in Tibetan. It means something kind of different. But, we have had these two, or we spend these 2 hours together. So even, when you're listening, you're considering and you're taking the time and the energy and the patience, to receive what he's saying, which is meaningful. So even if you can't really say for sure, like, yes, I believe this, or this works for me, the fact that you're able to endure, have the patience to consider and to listen, for this period, for these 2 hours is significant.
대인들 다 초방어마 이나 때문에 보벨로소라 나가 시지 정도 나나 약효레스 가오레스 시나치보레스 다 근데 주나 주바라브레다 근데 저사 마토나요 당코란들 덴도 메빌로직 제체네 근데 okay, and 다 너는 콜반데니 로또 도고다 도약치 동아르 양네 양도 근데 삼고거로.
So, in the Tibetan tradition, there is this attitude that's cultivated that's like, if I get sick, let me get sick. If I die, let me die. And that's kind of like this ability, this willingness to accept kind of anything and everything that might come your way, in terms of what has to be confronted, what has to be taken on in the path of practice. And that's kind of the most kind of advanced level of a Dharma practitioner. But even if we can't have that level, of kind of achievement in our practice, to at least in contemplating these truths of the suffering of samsara, to have the mind that really wishes to be free, that really wishes to achieve liberation from samsara. And so what we are doing in contemplating, for instance, these 4 thoughts is turning the mind away from like a fascination and addiction with samsara. We're turning the mind away from from samsara. And practice, like doing so through these contemplations again and again, to revert that tendency of attaching.
And so now, I think that most of the 4 mind changings or thoughts that reverse our thinking is already discussed with Drupon and Virginia. So today, if I understand correctly, we suppose discuss on the suffering. Is that true?
Mm-hmm. Well, you can really do whatever you like, but we are
Okay.
on the 4th of the 4 thoughts.
Okay.
We're in this progression of teaching, which is contemplating the defects of samsara, the suffering. Mm-hmm.
So here, the defects. What's defect in samsara? Defect is suffering. So suffering is the fundamental nature of this samsara. That's what's called a defect. And also, in the Buddhist tradition, not only aging, sickness, death, but birth is also suffering. So whether talking about mother's hardship or carry or the giving birth or those, or child itself through fetus to the grow, come out as a birth, those are treated as suffering. And suffering means not necessarily suffer, but here treat as fetus as suffering. So that's the case. And now we know the suffering is the first Four Noble Truths, not suffering itself, but knowing, understanding, or recognizing we are in a suffering. We have suffered. And this suffering cannot avoid just unwanted sufferings. I don't want a headache. Headache doesn't go away. And I don't want to get all the kind of sickness. This doesn't go away. And similarly here, the second Four Noble Truths from Four Noble Truths is cause of suffering. And gunjungs, tamji tene jungyores, gunjung dembas. The gunjung dembas say tene le tanyong mopani sene shakdwa. Gunjung say le nyins.
So the second of the Four Noble Truths, there's first the truth of suffering, and then second, the origination of suffering, or the source of suffering. So according to the Buddha, the true source of suffering the sources of suffering are karma and the afflictions, the afflicted mind states.
하여튼 인도 당보 동안 것이야데 개천보를 때네 ndana 당운도 기능나 운도 망체비 기능나 때네 단다 디 로도 넘버 시티 때네 운도 고축도니 용거요래 냠len 체비가 없어요 샥자서는 샥자라 때네 로도 넘버 시금야 된대요래 하나 가실라 든다 kum야 된대 로도 넘버 15레레니 니마 든 kum야 된대 너나 단데 약보 주줄 게 성원이나
호kum타데 소냐면 카시 둔다 레레라 둔다
레레
아하 드니 카시라
샥자서는 샥자서는 그런 로도 넘버 시 샹마 자라 kum야 된대 너와
So dini mato.
Tene da jertonina mundo kaps tene tabar. Nde ndene tönte samnok tangyoro.
That's all. So it's very important to recognize suffering, to understand suffering, and this is why it's also part of any tradition of preliminary practice found in Tibetan Buddhism. So we have like lots of different versions of Ngondro, lots of different versions of the preliminary practices, but in most all of them, you find reflection on the four thoughts that turn the mind. And when it's practiced, traditionally there are different ways that it's incorporated into the practice. Like, in many systems, a week is spent, meditating in retreat, a week on each of the four thoughts. In others, there's a retreat of 100 days dedicated to contemplating the four thoughts, so the 100-day retreat. But in any case, however it is the system of practice is approached, it is part of the preliminaries, which means that it's ongoing. So it is continually part of one's practice as the foundation of one's practice.
That in the Milarebic Zondo, Rigtum Kurvin Dungarante, some Yinglong Trabodons, that Rig took kurviki neri kangdu jijang to ina mainari ta miti parla shagorba o sa sayadel dewa yoris tene ngasong sayadel dungar yoris tene miti ta parla yudu kana jeba ina yo tene dungar yore ta tel sam kure sa zamna tene jechimela greba kongrik tan surnong la rwa ninglong chakbo dang sene ninglong sena ta nga zo ningla long sene jetong long sene nga zo nyon ro du tene ninglong dang wi ke cha shi yor ba po bilu so la long te ning nong xiong ro du tene mit nyon ro go res te yin du ta xin ninglong chakbo chi ngoni china dan di tanda di nong dang se ya te nying ge nang la tene long chak bo chi chu song se no ta lang song se no re no ba nying ge nong la long chak bo chi lang yong de te ko nying ko rang chu me ba chang ro te ni nyong ba no cha song se ke cha.
So it says, so the reflection on seeing the faults of samsara is a quote from Milarepa, in which he says, thinking of samsara's 6 realms of suffering, a sadness in my heart rises strongly. So Milarepa is saying, wherever it is in the 6 realms of samsara that beings take birth, even the states of like celestial abodes or divine realms where there is temporarily, a lot of pleasure and happiness, or, in the extreme manifestation of overt suffering in the 3 lower realms, and in between, in the human realms, there is really nothing but suffering to be found in this endless cycle of cyclic existence, among all the 6 realms. He says, in thinking about this, then there is a strong sadness that arises in the heart. So actually, the word in Tibetan is ninglong. So this is another word that has heart in it. It literally, like ning is heart and lung is wind, or lung. And so sometimes this is translated as depression. Sometimes it's translated as great, sadness, disenchantment. And what Kimbo Rinpoche is saying is he's explaining it. It's actually kind of goes deeper than any of these words, because like it's talking about wind entering the heart, which leads to a real kind of like instability. It's almost like sometimes when people go crazy, then you'll say like this is ninglong, that it is this wind that's entered the heart. So what it's referring to here is like such an intense despair or discontent that it's almost maddening. Because it is, this very powerful, almost visceral kind of wind entering the heart, like discontent or sadness.
Sometimes, of course, I read too much in Tibetan, so sometimes I don't know here. We can translate as sadness or not, because in Tibet we don't have sadness. Ninglong is...
or depression, you mean? Or just sadness?
Just satisfaction. It's more...
Disenchantment.
Yeah, it's not rather than sad. I'm not sure he's sad or he's...
Disgusted.
He's observed, disgust, kind of, it's kind of bizarre, and it's rather than sad. Sad seems bring him down to anchor, to something that he take so seriously that he get sad. But in the Tibetan, we don't have sadness here. So Nyinglung is the madness that caused by this disenchantment.
Disenchantment, or discontent.
Yeah. So think about that. If you think about suffering, if you don't have any of disenchantment or these things, means it's not really going to the bone and the bottom of heart and so forth. So maybe we can sort of stop here and also Melareva Zungur that. Nga hivin jegni rila tru namching imi tereni ta hivin jikwa porn te song Melareva and hival trak chini teni rila tru song yin song trak pol ten teni ta trak pol and drimbek ring la namching imi sayat kadu hiyong hakogmendo san te korong yundu gom nyingi gom deva yin tigi 다 다들 두줄 시야는 직파트 mandok송도 어디 인도 어디 마타바게 탄데 닝롱 당거요나 데 동아르기 닝롱 당거요나 텔리 타르비게 탑지체네 데니 냠렌 어디 약벌 랩소나 데니 동아 차요나 요 닝롱 당거 가지다 영거고요.
So there's also the famous line from Milarepa where he says, "Fearing death, I fled to mountain retreats and meditated persistently on the uncertainty of death. And in doing so, I overcame the fear of death, realizing the truth of deathlessness." But so what's being said here is like really, similar because in really persevering in the face of suffering and allowing for this ninglong, this heart, the wind that enters the heart, to become something that is brought onto the path, that deep sense of disenchantment or disillusionment, and sort of sadness, but not really sadness, but real disenchantment with the reality of samsara suffering, in taking that on and bringing that onto the path and really embracing it, then for this becomes necessary for anyone who's at a kind of a somewhat higher level of practice, that is inevitable. That ends up becoming something that is confronted and taken onto the path.
Maybe today we stop here, think about that, and also the books that the Ornament of Liberation and the Word of My Perfect Teacher. Those are good books, translated many times in English, so you can find good translations. And do you have one or two questions? Then we can start.
So it sounds like Khenpo Rinpoche is actually giving you homework. Am I correct? So the homework is, if you have, or if you don't have, get the Ornament of Precious Liberation and the Words of My Perfect Teacher, and maybe read, between now and when Khenpo Rinpoche comes back, maybe spend some time reading in those two books on the four thoughts that turn the mind.
Yeah.
I'm here.
Yes.
Hi, Rinpoche. Thank you so much for coming back. It's always a joy to have you here.
Me too.
I think the teachings from today are so important, for people like us, regular human beings. And you touch a very sensitive point, for someone like me. And about how to deal with sadness that in some cases becomes depression. And when you think about what we're going through in the world and you see wars and, crime and all these things, it's very easy to feel overwhelmed. And everybody has their own story. Everybody has their own circumstances. But I usually meet people my age, women in particularly, because women talk more openly, about how they're living a marriage after raising 4 children and starting all over again and overcoming different circumstances. And they turn to Buddhism like una tablita salvadora. How do you translate that?
¿Cómo?
Tablita salvadora, like a stepping stone where there's going to save them automatically.
Uh-huh.
And many of us might have thought that at some point in time. But I do remember the words of a very wise Lama or peer in my previous Sangha that said, in order to start into the Buddhist path, you have to reach at least a meaningful, a baseline of mental stability to be minimum mental healthy. So you can then progress, right? So because we're not therapists, he said, we don't come to the Sangha to be your therapist. And I think that really clicked my mind, years back. And I wanted to see if you can share more with us about that, because people need more guidance. That these are the fundamental principles, but there's some internal work that we need to do first before we really get on the path.
Thank you so much. Yes, yes, that's why I think preliminary practice is so important. It's more important that once we practice preliminary practice, better to understand sort of authentic way rather than this is something that's diluted with our fantasies and so forth. Whether these can suitable for everyone or not is another question. That's why I'm saying my responsibility is just hearing what text and traditional would say or it says, rather than sort of bring other elements to make sounds nice and so forth. So yeah, we can discuss more, and thank you so much, Yvonne.
David Buxton asks, are there any specific translations that are recommended?
The word of my perfect teacher, I think Pemakara did well, and they
Padmakara Translation Group. Mm-hmm.
yeah, they did well, and also they upgrade many editions. So maybe
Many editions.
that is more what we have, and probably that is more suitable for us.
So maybe the latest edition of the Padmakara Translation Group, translation of the words of my perfect teacher. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that I don't know what is latest edition here. And then the Ornament of Liberation is translated many years. So we know that they think they need another translation. So I think now, in the Karma Kagyu tradition, they translate one. It's called the Ornament
of Precious Liberation, and it's really good.
Yeah.
It's can you want to bring it up? We can put it on the screen actually. Yeah, this is definitely what I would recommend.
Please stand use these, because I was not criticizing, but I noticed this title long before I came here, and I introduce or say things that we should call this Ornament of Precious Liberation. So finally,
Finally have the right
I
translation
don't
of
have
the title.
any know these people, but finally the title come out. I believe also involved by Thupten Jinpa and so forth.
Yeah, so the Dalai Lama's translator, Thupten Jinpa, is also involved with this translation.
So please read these wonderful books. And sometimes I heard people, it's difficult because this is written as the authentic Dharma with traditional, that's a little bit less concerned about people's depression and stress and headaches and stomach upset and so forth. More worry about what next life. So these books are sometimes not easy to read and easy to relevant to our life. This is written, what do you know?
What century?
Yeah,
So Gampopa 10th.
12th century, and this is written in 19th century. So these two are very big gap in there, but still, it's really relevant, especially people who are doing practice, preliminary practice. So preliminary practice, the serious practice, okay? So we cannot just dilute it by other stuff. So that's why I'm kind of serious that even doesn't make sense to you, but still kind of participating and also losing a little bit your tightness is also good for your life, maybe.
And the Words of My Perfect Teacher is nice because there's lots of stories in it, so it's like more narrative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Especially Patrul Rinpoche, he's a very good writer and very sharp-mouthed. Sometimes he's scolding people. And of course, the 12th century Gampopa's writing is more scripture-based, and there's especially comes to, I think, chapter 9 and so forth, is talking about much more philosophical things. It's difficult to understand without background. But the rest is approachable, yeah. Okay, thank you so much today. Maybe we stop here and then please come back after, what day that would be, after 16 Sunday?
Oh, so Khenpo Rinpoche will be joining us again on the next Sunday that he'll be here will be, is it June 16th? Or
After 16.
after this, so I think it's the 22nd.
Okay.
We have it written down, just a second.
Yeah, 22nd.
It's the 22nd, yes, so that's when
And
Khenpo will
then
be
we
with us
have
again.
a few more weeks to go through this, ask questions, and if you just want to do preliminary practice, sit down, we can do that as well. So either way you want to.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So open to page 24 in the prayer book for the dedication prayers. By the virtues collected in the 3 times by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drakumpa, Ratna Shri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. And then to page 19. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher. Changchub Sencho Rinpoche Ma Ke Pana Ke Kyurjin Ke Panyampa Me Parya Go Chu Sem Jo Rinpoche Ma Ke Pa Nam Ke Gyurje Ke Pa Nyam Pa Me Pa Yam Gong Ne Gong Du Pel Var Jo.
Should leave here.
I'll take it. Thank you. So, mo let yorwa. Dini de chilo la chokse la shuna. Yeah, dini mo triki to.
Oh yeah. Mono lem do.
Let yorwa. Mo de jakar ki mo de.